And we've already got some people joining us, so that's really exciting. Hi to Megan and Marie and Roz and Linda. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And Janet and John and Fiona, thank you all for coming. Oh gosh, there's lots of you tonight, going too fast for me to read out the names, but it's brilliant to see. So thanks ever so much for joining us. It just takes a couple seconds to get everybody to transfer over from the waiting room into the call. So I like to just chat to myself for a wee minute while we get everybody in. But that looks like that should be everybody now, so I can go ahead and get started. Well, good evening, everyone. My name's Martha, and on behalf of everybody from Team TechFest, I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to our digital festival. This year, with the current circumstances, we made the decision that instead of not having a festival at all, we'd instead move absolutely everything online and have a completely digital festival. And I'm so glad that we did, because we're really excited by the new possibilities that are now available to us. And it's opened up brand new ways of being able to interact with you guys, with our audience at home. So thank you all for coming along tonight and supporting us and supporting our festival. Of course, none of this would have been possible if it wasn't for the support of our wonderful sponsors. So I do want to say a huge thank you to our joint principal sponsors, BP and Shell, and also Equinor, Ithaca Energy, SBRC, which is the Scottish Business Resilience Centre, and the Data Lab, all of whom are kindly supporting our digital public programme. And also a thank you to Rockrose Energy, who are supporting our digital activity weekend. All of these sponsors have really stood by us during these difficult times and continue to show how dedicated they are to STEM. So that's something that we, of course, really appreciate. And someone else who we very much appreciate is today's fabulous presenter, Dr. Olga Runcie, who has long been a friend of TechFest and is one of my personal festival highlights. So I'm absolutely delighted that she's able to join us tonight as part of our digital festival. I was lucky enough to go to one of Olga's events a couple of years ago, so I can tell you firsthand that her advice on sleep management is always brilliant and it really does work. But before we dive straight into tonight's event, I just have a couple of quick housekeeping announcements. You've probably already noticed we're using Zoom webinar tonight, which means your cameras and your microphones have automatically been turned off. However, there are going to be time for questions at the end, and that's of course something that myself and Olga encourage you to get involved with. So if you do want to ask a question, there's a couple ways you can do this. You can either type your question to us, and you can do this by clicking on the Q&A button or the chat button. So if you take your mouse and you move it to the bottom of your screen, you should see a little Q&A box or a chat box. If you click on that, you can type your question, which I'll then read out to Olga. Or alternatively, if you'd like to ask your question directly, you'll see at the bottom of your screen, there's also a little hands up icon that lets you pop your hand up, lets me know that you've got a question, and then all going well, I can unmute your mic and then you can speak to Olga directly. So that's fun as well. Okay, I think the only other thing for me to mention just now is that tonight's event is, of course, a digital event, and fingers crossed it should all go smoothly. But if there are any technical mishaps, then please do bear with us and we'll try and get it sorted as soon as we can. So without any further ado from me, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera now and pass you over to the wonderful Dr. Olga.
Excellent, thank you. I will just share my screen. Okay. And for some reasons, I can't move my slides. I will reshare. Just bear with me. I can't move my slides. It's worked well in the practice.
Isn't that always the way? It worked brilliantly when
Yeah,
we did this during the practice run, and as soon as we start broadcasting, it decides it's going to have an issue.
yeah. So
Oh, that
that's
looks
working
promising.
out. Excellent. So hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on sleep. My name is Olga Runcie, and I'm consultant in general adult psychiatry and sleep specialist. So my background in general mental health, but when I was trained to be a doctor and then trained to be a psychiatrist, we've got practically no education on sleep. And ironically, most of my patients in the clinics were presenting with difficulties of sleeping. So it's a very, very common complaint in mental health, having difficulties with sleep. So that certainly triggered my interest. And since then, I attended a number of courses and completed postgraduate degree in sleep. And I became totally immersed in this exciting field of sleep. So I feel very passionate about sleep. And hopefully today you will get some practical advice you can put straight into your life, straight into the practice. So the purpose of today's talk to give you sleep management advice which is based on science and which is proven to be working, and learn the principles of applying science of sleep into your day-to-day life. All techniques that I'm listing in this presentation today are safe to use for all people, but this general guidance are mainly intended for people who have occasional sleep difficulties. If you suspect that you might have more severe sleep disorder, underlying physical or mental illness, I will recommend that you have individual consultation to discuss this. So let's talk briefly about why do we need to sleep, because actually we sleep a considerable amount of our life asleep. We spend about 1/3 of our life sleeping. So, and if this is just suspension of consciousness, that will be a very evolutionary pricey for spending so much time doing nothing. But actually that was assumption for many years, and that sleep is just suspension of consciousness and not much was happening in sleep. And that's led to development of a culture that sleep was perceived as for lazy people. Sleep is something that just waste of time. But actually during the last decades, science accumulated overwhelming body of evidence that during sleep time, our body is engaging in very important housekeeping activities. The kind of reality on our planet that we live in a 24-hour cycle of darkness and light, and all species had to specialize to be active in a certain time of the day. So humans evolved to be a diurnal species. It's mean that we less active at night and we more active during daytime. So during the awake time, during daytime, we acquire information, we engage in feeding behavior, we meeting our friends, we acquire information and resources, engaging in social interactions, take care of each other. But when we are asleep, our body actually doing lots of important jobs for us. One of these important jobs are memory consolidation. Sleep is helping us to lay memory and to enforce memory. Our body is engaging in a tissue repair processes during sleep, restoring our energy resources. Our brain is engaging in a toxin clearance process, which is called glymphatic clearance, and this process is activated during sleep. We need to be in a physiological state of sleep to allow our brain to remove toxin metabolites, misfolding proteins, which mean bad proteins from the brain, and even substances like beta amyloid, which is involved in development of Alzheimer's disease. Our body helps to rebuild metabolic pathway and energy pathway during sleep. So sleep is serving fundamentally important functions for our physical health, our mental health, and we can certainly say that sleep is one of the important pillars of our health. So what is good sleep? Because sleep is a very subjective concept. So our subjective feelings are most important in describing good sleep. We need to have subjective satisfaction. It's our feeling that our sleep was deep enough, give us sufficient rest, happened at appropriate time, was of appropriate duration for our needs, was highly efficient to help us to sustain alertness during wakefulness. So how do we achieve good quality sleep? The rule number one: make sleep a priority. They say because there was a culture for many years in our society that sleep is for weak people, sleep is for lazy, it's still kind of dragging on in our culture. And very frequently we put sleep on the last of our priorities. We allow ourselves to go to sleep only when all other so-called important jobs are done on our to-do list. If we know that sleep is fundamentally important for our health, we need to recognize importance of sleep, and we need to give it appropriate time in our to-do list. So we need to place sleep on to-do list just like any other important activities, and not only after all other things are done. We need to allocate enough time for our sleep according to our sleep need. It's important to understand that sleep need is very, very individual. So some people need to sleep, say, 6 hours and they will be feeling excellent and fine. Some people need to sleep 10 hours. In general literature, you possibly came across quite commonly about 8 hours of sleep as the kind of golden standard, and everybody asking, do they need to sleep 8 hours? 8 hours is mathematical average in the population. But there are people who called short sleepers, and they will be functioning absolutely perfectly well on 5 to 6 hours of sleep. There are very small proportion of people in population who are very short sleepers, extremely short sleepers, and they can kind of fulfill all their needs of sleep within 4 hours, 5 hours of sleep. But there are also people who are long sleepers and they need 9 to 10 hours. So it's important to recognize your own individual need for sleep and allocate enough time in your daily timetable to meet this need, and don't compare yourself to anybody else. Do not trade sleep for anything else. Sleep deprivation is illegal torture method, which is prohibited by Geneva Convention. But we humans kind of just intentionally do it for ourselves. We deprive ourselves from sleep and feel that some other activities are more important. But I hope that by the end of the presentation, you'll change your opinion and you'll firmly believe that sleep is a priority, and nothing can be more important than good quality of sleep. So first principle of regulation of sleep that's important to understand, called homeostatic principle. So we have sleep homeostat. Sleep homeostat is determines the relationship between wake time and sleep time. And according to homeostatic principles of sleep regulation, the longer you stay awake, the sleepier you will get, and more deeper and longer your sleep will develop on consecutive night. So according to homeostatic principle of sleep, sleep is inevitable, and even people with poor quality of sleep at some point will feel so sleepy that they will fall asleep naturally. And sleep is a passive process. Sleep happens by itself when we are ready to sleep, when our brain is ready to sleep. So on this illustration here, you'll see the intervals in yellow bars, the period of awake, and then blue bar, period of sleep. So if on average, as say, remember this is average, it does not apply to you as individual. You might have individual sleep need. On average, humans sleep about 8 hours. So that's mean that we'll need to stay awake for 16 hours, being fully alert, engage in activities in order to build adequate sleep pressure. So sleep pressure has direct linear correlation to the time of being awake. And the longer we stay awake, the higher sleep pressure we'll get. And at some point, sleep pressure will go so high, so intensively high that sleep will become irresistible. We will not be able to fight sleep any longer. Sleep will happen by itself. So they say, because we all have a different duration of sleep need, we will have a different duration of awakefulness we need to be engaged in order to build sleep pressure. Obviously, the shorter you sleep, the longer you need to have a period of awake. Another important thing to know that the period of awake is different. So you might be awake, but if you function on autopilot and you just engage in a very familiar activity, something that you do routinely, you don't even know, you don't even noticing that you're doing these activities, you might not feel the same sleep pressure compared to what going to happen if you engage in purposeful activities, when you need to engage in some problem solving and learning. So awake is different. And the advice that can be given, if you really want to have a good sleep pressure, try to use your wake time by engaging in purposeful activities, solve some problems, achieve goals, engage in learning processes. And then your brain will get more tired and will need more time to rest and sleep deeper. So how to apply homeostatic principles of sleep regulation in your life? So keep your own individual sleep diary by knowing your individual sleep need. Do not compare your sleep duration to anybody else's sleep duration. You only sleep as much as to feel refreshed. And remember these intervals, we need regularity of the intervals. So if you start expanding your sleep opportunity, or shifting your sleep diary, that will affect the regularity and rhythm of wake time as well. So for these reasons, it's really good to have a regularity of these intervals, to get to bed at roughly the same time, to get out of the bed at the same time. But the trick is to go to bed only when you feel sleepy. Because people read popular literature about management of sleep and sleep hygiene, and the rules rules state go to bed at the same time. But at the same time, you'll need to recognize when is that exact time when your mind, your body start feeling sleepy. And that will be the signal. So you'll need to go to bed at that time when you feel sleepy, because when you feel sleepy, you'll transition to sleep passively without any effort, and sleep will happen by itself. Regarding wake up time, there is no perfect wake up time. Again, it's individual, and some people more morning people, some people a bit kind of night owls. It is up to you. So you'll just learn your needs, your preferences. But once you know these preferences, try to follow this rhythm and that your personal routine. So why do we need to go why do we need to go to bed only when we feel sleepy? Because we can't command our sleep. We can't tell our sleep, fall asleep now. It's just not going to work like that. We need to have a good level of sleep pressure, so desire, the urge to sleep, in order to transition to sleep naturally. Feeling fatigued, exhausted, and tired is not the same as feeling sleepy. And this is what happened to people very frequently. Feeling tired, kind of prompting people to go to bed to rest. But it doesn't mean that the brain and mind are ready to sleep. People, let's say, go to bed at 10 o'clock, but not able to get off to sleep until 1 o'clock. And that's 3 times spent in bed, just worry about inability to sleep, ruminating, being anxious, build up that irritation about not getting to sleep. So recognize when the sleepy feelings actually happen to you. And sleepiness can present with following signs. Our eyes are getting heavy, our eyelids getting heavy, our eyes wants to close, kind of feeling droopy. We find ourselves yawning, nodding off, and struggling to stay awake. Our muscle tone can loosen up in the neck, and we start kind of nodding. So this is sleepy feeling. So when we have the sleepy feeling, that's indication this is time to go to bed. So sleepier we are at night, the more likely that we'll fall asleep quickly. And even if you wake up after initial sleep onset, we will get back to sleep promptly and quickly after awakening. Another important rule in sleep management, using our bedroom and our bed for its purpose. And the purpose of bed is for sleeping and intimacy. There are no other purposes in bed. The bed is not for entertainment, it's not for eating, it's not for watching television, not for using social media. Bed is only for sleep. Bed is not designed to be awake and worry about inability to sleep. And if we do that, if we lie in bed night after night, worrying about being unable to sleep, essentially our mind pairs the bedroom with wakefulness and anxiety and frustration about inability to sleep. And that can lead to anticipatory fear of being unable to sleep. This is people with insomnia frequently describe that they worry, they really fear to go to bed because they don't know what kind of night they're going to have, and they already anticipate being unable to get off to sleep. So if you're not able to fall asleep promptly, just leave the bedroom, go to living room, sitting room, sit down and engage in quiet activities. And it's good to remove clocks from the bedroom if possible. And stop watching the clock because it's really not important. It's just feeding into that anxiety. So the bedroom, how do we arrange our bedroom to be compatible with physiological requirements for sleep? Just imagine your bedroom as a cave. It needs to be cool, quiet, and dark. So remove television, all electronic gadgets is absolute taboo in the bedroom. Just give yourself freedom and liberty to stop using electronic devices reasonably early in the evening, and certainly do not bring them into the bedroom. Use comfortable mattress. And regarding temperature, there are lots of questions people ask about the temperature. Temperature in the bedroom needs to be neutral. It should not be hot to feel uncomfortable and should not be too cold to feel uncomfortable. So it needs to be absolutely neutral, so it does not trigger any unpleasant sensations. Usually it needs to be slightly cooler than other areas in the house, and recommended temperature is between 18 to 21 degree Celsius. We need a bit of a temperature drop in order to get off to sleep, and our core body temperature will be the lowest in the middle of the sleep. And this correlates with environment, because in all environment, even in tropical and equatorial areas, the temperature at night night will be lower compared temperature to daytime, and we adapted, we evolved following this environmental temperature regime. So we need cooler environment in order to sleep better, and make sure that the noise level reduced to minimum in the bedroom. And if you're very sensitive to light, also use blinds to block the light. So your body, how do you prepare your body to sleep? Few very commonly asked questions related to caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, food, and exercise. Caffeine. I told you about body sleep homeostat and how we have a homeostatic regulation of sleep. So this homeostat works through chemical processes that go through the changes during period of wakefulness. During period of wakefulness, we accumulate the chemical called adenosine, which eventually start affecting sleep-on neurons and help us getting off to sleep. So adenosine is a sleep-promoting substance. Caffeine chemically is very similar in a structure to adenosine. So caffeine can act on the same receptors in the brain like adenosine does. So if caffeine block these receptors, so adenosine unable to carry out the jobs that adenosine is supposed to do, and that can keep us awake. That's explain the wakefulness promoting effect of caffeine. So just be mindful with caffeine, and we all have different sensitivity to caffeine. There are a group of people who are highly reactive and people who say that they can drink lots of coffee and not feeling the effect. So know your own response to caffeine, but in general, in kind of general advice, enjoy your coffee in the morning and try not to consume caffeinated drinks since late afternoon. From around 3-4 p.m. It's better to abstain from use of caffeine. The older we get, the longer time we need to metabolize caffeine. If younger adults can metabolize caffeine within 4 to 5 hours, older adults might require 8 to 9 hours to metabolize caffeine. And therefore, effect of caffeinated drinks might be more noticeable in older adults. Nicotine is highly stimulating for the brain and can cause troubles falling asleep and certainly can impair sleep. After smoking cigarettes, nicotine is available in the brain literally in few seconds. It's a very quickly passing what's called blood-brain barrier and available in the brain, giving highly stimulatory effect to the brain. Alcohol is a double-sided medal for sleep because it has dual effect on sleep. Alcohol can help people to fall asleep because it has depressant effect. It can calm down the anxiety. And for these reasons, lots of people unfortunately start self-medicating with alcohol when they experience sleep difficulties. Unfortunately, the second part of the sleep can be very much disturbed after drinking alcohol close to bedtime because metabolites of alcohol can be wakefulness promoting, can trigger nightmares, can also trigger very other very vivid dreams, even if it's not nightmares, can fragment sleep, can really reduce the depths of sleep. And due to dehydration that we can experience after drinking alcohol, people can have headaches in the morning. So if you want to enjoy a glass of wine or some other beverage of your choice, do it around dinner time, but not close to bedtime. So you have enough time to metabolize alcohol, making sure that these nasty metabolites do not impair your sleep. Food, it is important not to go to bed hungry because hunger can disturb sleep. So light snack at bedtime might help to fall asleep, but avoid too heavy food or food with lots of fat content close to bedtime, because that can trigger gastric reflux and can cause awakenings from sleep due to these very unpleasant heavy sensations in your stomach. Fluids, another important questions. Lots of people in my clinics describe that they get up, they wake up a few times to go to toilet to pass waters. Actually, we can tolerate a period of fluid restrictions in the evening and at night time. Our physiology is designed for that. So certainly we can restrict fluids at nighttime. It's important to have good, adequate hydration during daytime, but you can abstain from drinking fluids from around 8 o'clock at night. Practically just stay with 1 cup of fluid within 4 hours of bedtime. It's not going to affect your health in a negative way if you remember hydrate adequately during daytime. But it can help you to really kind of to save these awakenings, to stop you going to toilet in the middle of the night. Exercise. Exercise has very robust evidence to support a positive effect on sleep. Just like any other moderate physical activity. So it is important to engage in exercise, but it's better not to engage in a very vigorous exercise regime close to bedtime, because once we exercise, our body temperature can rise, our blood pressure, our pulse can rise, and all these physiological parameters need to settle down to help our body to fall asleep naturally. So again, just be mindful about effect of exercise on your arousal and plan exercise activities accordingly. Your mind, how do you prepare your mind? It's really good to have rituals, kind of sleep-related rituals, and it's again, it's very individual. There is no one advice fits everybody. This ritual can include having a warm bath, shower, reading time, practicing relaxation, listening to calming music, or sleep-inducing audio programs before going to bed. So your body recognizes these signals as a time to start slowing down, preparing for bed, and this is what's important. So kind of building this rapport between your mind and recognition of the rituals as a preparation for bedtime. It's good to allocate a bit of time in the evening to look through the worries, particularly if you're an anxious person and you're prone to this anxieties and ruminations at nighttime. If you one of these people who describe mind becoming overactive and dwelling on what happened during daytime or planning ahead for tomorrow, and you can't get off to sleep because you think about what's coming up next day, allocate a bit of time in your diary after dinner time. It can be 10-15 minutes, but you open actual physical diary and you try to identify the worries of today. What is on your mind? What's actually felt to you as unfinished business? Because usually it's unfinished things, that's something that we didn't have time to finish today, or something coming up tomorrow, keeping us worried and awake. And once you wrote this down, try to make a little plan in your mind. How are you going to deal with that event? Who do you need to speak to? What do you need to do? You don't need to write all to-do list or action plan. Just run through this plan in your mind, and in bullet points, just write down few words. and if there are any emotional issues, you can also write them down in your diary. Once you put all these worries in your diary, you can close your diary and you can tell your diary night night out loud, say good night, go to sleep. And this called putting your day to sleep before you putting yourself to sleep. And then you can put your diary to sleep somewhere. Find the place for your diary to sleep. It can be a bookshelf on your desk, maybe under your bed. And say then you only go to bed when you feel sleepy. So do not try to fall asleep. So you wait when it feels that sleep is almost there, sleep is coming, because trying to sleep only makes problem worse. When we try to fall asleep, we put in so much emphasis and attention on something that should happen passively and naturally, and that's leading to it's kind of eventually lead to development of that anxieties and paying too much attention to inability to sleep. So regarding rituals and management of our arousal, this illustration presents the state of our cognitive engagement and cognitive arousal. So when we awake during daytime, we awake, alert, we engage in problem solving and creative activities. And then when we're preparing for sleep, we need to be in a state of deficient arousal, which is what described by very high sleep pressure. When sleep pressure is so intensely high that we can't sustain our arousal, but we can't jump from being awake and alert straight to level of deficient arousal. We need to go through the stages, and the stages is a kind of quiet and attentiveness, a little bit of understimulation, and that a little bit of like excessive sleepiness, drowsiness, and sedation. So we need to go through all these stages. What's happening nowadays, particularly when people kind of in a lockdown situation working from home, I hear from lots of people working to late hours into the evening and in front of computer, kind of solving serious problems, kind of planning and obviously engaging their mind very actively. But then coming the time they switching off computer and feels that the mind and the brain will switch off just like computer switching off. And they go to bed straight after finishing work. And this unfortunately not going to happen. So we need that period of time to allow our mind to go through all stages of processes from awake to deficient arousal. So we need to have these rituals to manage that level of arousal. We need to define the boundaries when we stop working, and that's particularly important for people who are working from home because it's really easy to push the boundaries and extending working hours into late evening. So you draw the line. Let's say, okay, I finish at 5 o'clock. If you finish at 5 o'clock, emails off, computer is off, stop working. So you've been busy at the state of awake and alert. You stop being busy. You drawing the line, the job finished. And then you have period of unwind. It's really easy and common sense, but we do forget this all modern routine and the kind of modern working environments. So we need period of having a dinner, watching television, going for quiet walk. So just unwind your mind. And during period of unwind, your mind will go through that cognitive inertia, will continue thinking about what you were doing today, what kind of problems you were solving, what you've been working on. But eventually it will kind of get lighter and lighter, and you'll push all this kind of memories of what you've been doing today on the background of your mind. So then you also draw the line and say, okay, television off, phone is off, you have your bathroom routine. So that's your period of pre-sleep. You're not ready to sleep yet, but you can engage in a very quiet reading, maybe mindful coloring, relaxation, something really quiet, monotonous, maybe just a little bit boring. So nothing too exciting and stimulating, because it's a period of pre-sleep. You don't want to stimulate your brain with something really kind of novel and exciting. And once the period of pre-sleep passed, when you start feeling sleepy, that's when you go to bed. Okay, so you say it's really common sense, but we do forget and we expect from our mind, once stop working and straight to bed. Sleep is not going to happen. So what you're supposed to do if you had a bad night's sleep? The rule number one, do not catastrophize. Bad night sleeps are very common, happen to everybody. Basically, our level of stress can affect our ability to sleep, and we humans will report occasional bad night sleep. So do not extend one bad night's sleep to all your ability to sleep. But important to avoid taking a daytime nap, particularly if you're prone to insomnia. If you're prone to chronic insomnia, do not take daytime nap, because people with insomnia maybe need a bit longer time to build sufficient level of sleep pressure. And do not extend your sleep opportunities on the following morning. So that's a mistake people do. If you had a bad night's sleep, kind of intuitively feel, okay, I'll need to give myself a few extra hours in bed. By doing that, we're shifting our intervals of sleep. So if you get up later, if you leave your bed later on a day, so that's interval of wake will be transferred. So it's mean that your expected getting off to sleep time will be shifting as well. So you get up and leave your bed at the same time as usual, even if you had a bad night's sleep. You can give yourself extra half an hour, but that's it. Do not compensate for sleep loss. Just get up at usual time and go through the day. You might review what you're doing on that day. You might abstain from engaging in far too complex activities or far too difficult decisions, but just go through the day and wait for your normal sleep time. So go to your bed at a usual time, not earlier, not 2 hours, not 3 hours earlier. Just wait for your usual sleep time. And by doing that, the sleep will resolve itself. So bad night, one bad night, couple bad nights, nothing to worry about, happens to many people. So for the next few minutes, I want to focus on importance of circadian mechanisms of sleep control and how we can use the knowledge of circadian biology and circadian medicine in our sleep management. The word circadian describe 24-hour events, 24-hour cycles. Because we evolved in environment with 24-hour periods of darkness and light, we need to adjust to this environment. So the circadian rhythm that our body generate happens generated endogenously. Our body has capacity to generate a circadian rhythm on its own. And actually every cell in our body has a clock, has molecular clock. And can you imagine if every cell in the body, every organ, our heart, our liver, our kidneys, our stomach has a clock. So something need to orchestrate, something need to coordinate all these clocks. So it's like an orchestra, require a conductor to make sure that all peripheral clocks works in synchronicity. So the role of the conductor of body clocks is taken by the tiny area of the brain, which indicated on this picture. It's called suprachiasmatic nucleus or nuclei. We have two of them. So suprachiasmatic nucleus is our master body clock. If we'll cut it out from the brain and put in a petri dish, we'll see that suprachiasmatic nucleus still can produce circadian rhythm. It generates the rhythm. It's not perfectly 24-hour rhythm. It's a slightly longer, in majority of people, not slightly longer than 24-hour, and a minority of people, it's slightly shorter than 24-hour. But because we live in a 24-hour environment, we need to synchronize our body clocks with the environment. And this role is done with our eyes, particularly retina in our eyes, and response to environmental light, to sunlight. So our eyes, the cells in the retina called retinal ganglions, receive signal from the sun, code the signal, and pass the signal through this green pathway that's called retinal hypothalamic tract to the master clock. And that's a kind of the check of the clock that happens every day. So we check in our clock and adjusting our clock. So our body clocks are adjusted. And then suprachiasmatic nucleus, say, controlling all peripheral body clocks, sending signals to all cells in our body. And that is how our body works in synchronicity. So these principles requires regular exposure to environmental light, to sunlight. And with modern life, when lots of people engage in shift work, working on nights, so on rotating pattern of shifts, and even with lockdown during the pandemic, and people were asked to stay indoors and not to leave the houses, we're possibly lacking that regularity of exposure to environmental light. And this results in a considerable increase in sleep complaints and the difficulties in sleep and shifts kind of in the sleep patterns, the people losing rhythm and regularity of their sleep. So I would say we, at that previous slide indicated that we need exposure to environmental light. That's slightly maybe on tangent, but I decided to include this slide anyway, just to remind you what is environmental light consist of, what is sunlight consist of. Here on this picture, you'll see that sunlight includes visible spectrum of light, but it also has three types: ultraviolet light and also has infrared light. So the visible spectrum of light that our photoreceptors working with in our eyes and give us vision, give us the picture. But we also have a receptor in the retina, in the eye, called melanopsin, which respond to particular frequency of light, that's 480 nanometers. And that is our circadian regulator. That gives us a signal that it's time to wake up, to get up and get ready for the day. Okay, and it's important to remember that sun spectrum of light is very rich, so it includes all these frequencies, and they all play a very important role in effect on our physical health and mental health. And that's another subject that absolutely fascinates me, how light affect our health. And maybe next year on Tech Fest we can run more detailed talk about effect of sunlight on our health. Again, slightly off topic on tangent. This ultraviolet light type B, which is responsible for production of vitamin D in our skin. So in order to build up vitamin D, we need to have exposure to sunlight, and particularly we need to have ultraviolet light type B. Living in Scotland, we don't get ultraviolet type B between September and March, because sun needs to be roughly on 35 degree over horizon to give us this ultraviolet light type B. So if we don't get UVB, we don't build vitamin D. Vitamin D is not directly involved in regulation of sleep in a very direct way, but vitamin D, apart from importance for our muscular and bone health, is also very important in mood regulation. So vitamin D is required in order to build adequate levels of chemicals like serotonin and dopamine, which the two main monoamines regulating our mood. So when we lack in vitamin D, we might feel fatigued, tired, kind of mental brain fog. So that's, and our sleep can suffer as well. People can oversleep and feel sleepy all the time just because of lacking serotonin and dopamine. So it's really important to get out, to get natural daylight. And during winter time, if you're prone to be low in vitamin D, to check it out, maybe have a blood test and determine whether you need supplementation with vitamin D. And let's take a look again at the spectrum of natural light, sunlight, and comparison to artificial light, what we're getting from modern electronic gadgets. So here on the left, on two pictures, we have spectrum of natural light as recorded in Los Angeles on 6 in the morning and 10 in the morning. So you can see that we have all types of light presented on this spectrum. And in the morning, we have a bit more of a blue light. This is our circadian regulatory light signals that's alerting for our brain. This particular spectrum of light suppress melatonin, the hormone that helps us to sleep. So that's alerting signal, suppressing melatonin, and also forcing our body, or kind of helping our body to start making cortisol. Cortisol is a stress-related hormone which we need to get up, really, just to kind of get our alertness up in the morning. So, and this effect of this particular spectrum of light could be partly neutralized by presence of ultraviolet light type A. So the stress-inducing response of blue light will be partly neutralized by ultraviolet type light A, and also by presence of red light, near infrared and infrared light. So in nature, it all happens in harmony. So we get positive effect from circadian oscillator, circadian stimulation, but we have kind of the bad effects, the negative effects, if they happen, they will be neutralized by presence of other spectrum of light. And now take a look what's happening from artificial and artificial light. So these pictures, spectrum of light is recorded from iPad 4 and iPhone 6. And you'll see a very, very high disproportionate spike of shortwave blue light here. And this happened in technology because this type of light most energy sufficient, and so in order to save energy, kind of technology developed in that way to have a very high proportion of shortwave light in all modern gadgets. And this means that we have highly stimulatory effect from these gadgets on our brain, on our mind, and suppression of melatonin production, which can negatively affect our ability to get off to sleep. And also there are no neutralization. Obviously, these gadgets will not have ultraviolet light presence to neutralize negative effects of blue light, and very, very little of the red light and no infrared to neutralize these negative effects. Okay, so this is pictures are taken from the website called Fluxometer. So you all can visit this website and present lots of interesting information on different gadgets, and also give information, exposure to these gadgets, how it can shift your circadian cycle, circadian pattern to what degree. So our circadian rhythms can affect all our hormones and all bodily functions. Why circadian rhythms are so important? Because our body is anticipating this change. And during daytime and nighttime, our body engaging in very different processes. As I started this presentation saying that at nighttime, our body engaging in a clearance and energy restoration and body kind of tissue repair. So we need to have very different proteins to do different jobs. So look, these very, very simple examples. For example, our melatonin, rising at nighttime. So this graph will represent melatonin, and blue line for younger adults and red light for older adults. So we have rise of melatonin at nighttime and fall of melatonin during daytime. Its opposite, cortisol, will have completely opposite fluctuations. So cortisol, we need a higher cortisol during daytime and low cortisol at nighttime. Our temperature goes through the fluctuations. Our central nervous system firing, the activity will go through the same circadian fluctuations. And practically any hormone you'll take will be under circadian influence. So in order to allow our body to function to its best capacity, we need to follow these physiological requirements and allow our body to have period of darkness, period of rest and sleep, and also allow our body to have adequate exposure to natural daylight and engage in wakefulness-related activities. So how do you apply circadian principles and to helping you to sleep yourself better? So remember that our body needs to be in the darkness to produce melatonin. Melatonin is called sometime in literature as a sleep hormone, but it's not entirely correct. Melatonin is a darkness-related molecule. Melatonin is produced in our body during a dark period, and melatonin plays lots of other important roles apart from having important facilitation of sleep. It's also engaged in metabolism of glucose and insulin. Melatonin is quite a powerful antioxidant, which helps us to scavenge free radicals and remove free radicals at nighttime from our body. So light is destroying melatonin, and particularly blue light. And now you've seen on the pictures that our kind of modern electronic gadgets produce too much blue light, which suppress melatonin. So exposure to these gadgets, working on these small gadgets on our phones, on our tablets, will suppress melatonin. And because younger adults, teenagers, they have larger amplitudes of melatonin, so they have larger level of melatonin produced in the body. This type of people, young adults and teenagers, will be more susceptible to harmful effect of electronic gadgets, because the brain will be most responsive for kind of reduction of melatonin or shift in melatonin production in response to this artificial light. So light is a signal for our body. It's a daytime, so we need light during daytime, and at nighttime we need darkness. In order to get all benefits from melatonin, we need a period of darkness. And artificial light at night making it harder for us to go to sleep and can be harmful to our health. We have lots of evidence in science now looking at a harmful effect of shift work when people work in at night or rotational shift. And most likely explanation for harmful effect on health, disruptions of circadian rhythms. So we really need to follow natural rhythm, environmental rhythm, because when we start messing up with nature, our body suffers. Technology is evolving so rapidly and so fast that our physiology and our biology is not able to catch up with this development. As humans, we were evolving for millions of years, adapting to environment, and modern technology, it's literally few decades what we have now. Kind of biological systems are not able to catch up with that pace of development. So I hope I really persuaded you that we do need daily exposure to natural light, because we need all spectra of natural light, unfiltered natural light. So the best is to get outdoors and get natural light into our eyes. So maximize time outside. Maximizing time outside will help you to make your circadian rhythm stronger, and stronger circadian rhythm mean that easier routine for your body to follow, and that body will recognize this rhythm and will produce will make yourself sleepy at certain time naturally. And we need to try to minimize exposure to artificial light indoors during daytime, and particularly avoid artificial light at nighttime. Remember that electronic devices contains a large amount of blue light, and this is a kind of light that's strongest for suppression of melatonin production. It is possible to put different filters on your computer, on your screens, to try and to block out blue light, but other type of light also can suppress melatonin, not to the same degree, but it still can play the role. It is also possible to use blue light filtering glasses, because it's unrealistic to expect that we all can stop using computers and gadgets. That's our life now. We working and we communicating with people. But here on picture, on illustration, I put a picture of blue light blocking glasses. They will block the particular spectrum between 400 and 480 nanometers of light. That's a stimulatory kind of spectrum of light to our brain, which suppress melatonin. So if you need to work with computer, at least use this type of glasses. Okay, so that's the end of the presentation. So to recap, for better sleep, recognize your individual sleep need and really allocate this time in your diary, and do not trade this time for anything else. Go to bed when you feel sleepy. Use your bed only for sleep. Do not catastrophize if you had a bit of a bad night's sleep. Maximize time outdoors for natural daylight and minimize exposure to artificial light indoors. Avoid light at night and create rituals for management of arousal. Okay, so and now we, I think, can open for questions. And
Thank you so much for that. That was so fascinating and really helpful, I think, as well. Not to mention timely, because I don't know if you've seen this in your own work, but I keep reading that more and more people are experiencing difficulty sleeping, and especially that seemed to be a side effect of lockdown. So very timely advice there. We do have time for some questions. As I mentioned in the beginning, if you'd like to ask a question, you can either type it into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, or you can pop it in the chat box. Or if you'd like to ask a question directly, then you can pop up your hand and I'll mute your mics. We do have